In a packed, intense courtroom, all eyes were on a stern judge preparing to deliver his verdict when a little girl's voice suddenly broke the silence. "I'm hungry." The room fell still. Her mother was utterly mortified. But what happened next left everyone stunned and changed their lives forever. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Let's get started. Vanessa Carter woke up to the muffled hum of early morning traffic. Newark never truly slept, but for Vanessa, sleep was a luxury she could hardly afford. The dim light filtered through the old blinds of her one-bedroom apartment, highlighting the peeling wallpaper. Her 6-year-old daughter, Chloe, slept peacefully on the pull-out couch, clutching her favorite stuffed lion, Leo. Vanessa envied the calmness on Chloe's face. It reminded her why she worked 2 jobs, why she pushed herself to the brink day after day. But today wasn't about work. Today, Vanessa had to face something far worse: the Essex County Courthouse. The $500 fine was all she could think about. It wasn't just the amount, it was what it meant. She hadn't parked in the handicap spot out of carelessness. Chloe had been burning with fever that night, and Vanessa was desperate to get her medicine. A few minutes of poor judgment had spiraled into this. "Chloe," Vanessa whispered, gently shaking her daughter awake. Chloe stirred, her curly hair a wild mess. "We have to get ready." "Mommy," Chloe mumbled, her eyes still closed. "Can I have waffles today?" Vanessa swallowed hard. "Maybe later, sweetie. We're running late." As they left their tiny apartment, Vanessa felt the weight of the day ahead pressing on her. The Essex County Courthouse towered over the bustling Newark street like a monument to power and authority. Its gray stone walls, streaked with decades of grime, seemed to absorb the city's noise, leaving an eerie silence at its doors. The imposing facade felt alive, as if it were watching everyone who dared enter. Vanessa paused on the courthouse steps, clutching Chloe's hand. Her daughter, oblivious to the tension in the air, hummed a tune and skipped on the cracked concrete. Vanessa forced herself to take a deep breath. It's just a fine, she thought. But that fine might as well have been a mountain she had to climb barefoot. The doors creaked open as she pushed them, and the chill inside hit her like a slap. It wasn't just the air conditioning, it was the atmosphere. The courthouse seemed designed to make people feel small. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, but the brightness did nothing to warm the place. Uniformed officers lined the walls, their stony expressions daring anyone to step out of line. Voices whispered and echoed off the high ceilings, an odd mix of urgency and defeat. Vanessa tugged Chloe closer, wishing she could hide her daughter from the sharp edges of this world. But Chloe, ever curious, looked around wide-eyed. "Mommy, this place is big," Chloe whispered, her voice bouncing off the walls like a bell. Vanessa hushed her gently, offering a nervous smile to the few people who glanced their way. She felt out of place in her worn gray coat and scuffed boots, surrounded by lawyers in sharp suits and officers with polished shoes. Case number 112, Bairstow versus State of New Jersey. A clerk called from the front of the room. Vanessa flinched as though she'd been struck. Every name announced felt like a countdown to her turn. Her palms were slick with sweat, and her heart pounded in her chest. She knew of Judge Henry Reynolds, of course. Everyone did. His reputation was legendary in Essex County, unyielding, precise, and unshakably devoted to the law. People said he never cracked a smile, never allowed excuses, and never reduced a fine. Vanessa sat in the wooden pews near the back, rehearsing her plea over and over. "Your Honor, I'm a single mother. I didn't mean to park there. It was an emergency." But no matter how she framed it in her mind, it sounded flimsy, like paper tearing under pressure. Case number 118, Vanessa Carter. The bailiff finally called, his deep voice reverberating through the room. Vanessa's stomach dropped. The moment she had dreaded was here. She stood shakily, tightening her grip on Chloe's hand. Chloe winced. "Sorry," Vanessa whispered, letting go slightly. Her hands trembled as they made their way to the front. The judge's bench was a fortress in itself, elevated so high it felt like he was looking down from a throne. Judge Reynolds sat behind it, his sharp jawline and piercing gray eyes as intimidating as his reputation. His black robe seemed to blend into the shadowy corners of the room, making him appear larger than life. Vanessa felt the weight of his gaze even though his eyes didn't leave the file in front of him. He flipped through the pages slowly, methodically, as if each turn of paper was deliberate. The silence stretched unbearable. "You're contesting a $500 fine for parking in a handicap spot," he said at last, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Do you deny this?" Vanessa felt her knees buckle. Her throat tightened and her words came out in a rush. "No, Your Honor, but—" Before she could finish, Chloe's voice rang out loud and clear, cutting through the oppressive silence like a burst of sunshine. "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we get waffles?" The courtroom froze. Chloe's innocent request hung in the air, and for a moment it seemed like even the marble walls held their breath. Vanessa's face turned crimson as every head in the room turned toward them. The bailiff raised an eyebrow. A lawyer in the gallery stifled a laugh behind a cough. Even Judge Reynolds paused, his pen hovering mid-air as if someone had hit a pause button on him. Slowly, his steely eyes shifted from the file to the tiny voice's source. Chloe stood on tiptoes, clutching her stuffed lion with one arm and tugging on Vanessa's sleeve with the other. Her big brown eyes sparkled with unfiltered honesty as she gazed up at her mother. Vanessa crouched slightly, whispering in a mortified tone, "Chloe, no, you can't." "But I'm hungry," Chloe replied matter-of-factly, her little voice carrying through the hushed courtroom. "I want waffles." This time, the suppressed chuckles broke free. Someone in the back snorted, and a ripple of soft laughter spread through the room like a wave. Even the bailiff's lips twitched, though he quickly straightened his face. Vanessa wanted to sink into the floor. Her hands shot up to cover her face, her cheeks burning as hot as a summer sun. But the most shocking reaction came from Judge Reynolds himself. For the first time anyone could remember, his cold, unyielding exterior cracked. One eyebrow arched upward, and something resembling a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Did you just say waffles?" he asked, his tone neither sharp nor scolding, but genuinely curious. Vanessa blinked at him, her mortification momentarily replaced by confusion. Chloe, on the other hand, nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah," Chloe said brightly. "With syrup, please." The tension that had gripped the courtroom moments before shattered. Laughter erupted, unrestrained this time. Even Judge Reynolds leaned back in his chair, shaking his head in disbelief. For Vanessa, it was both the most embarrassing and surreal moment of her life. And yet, deep down, she felt the slightest glimmer of hope. Something was happening here, something she couldn't quite understand. "I'm so sorry, Your Honor," she stammered. She didn't mean." Judge Reynolds held up a hand to silence her. His usually stern features softened as he addressed Chloe directly. "What's your name, young lady?" "Chloe Carter," she said proudly, "but my mommy calls me Coco." The judge's lips quirked into what could almost be described as a smile. "Well, Coco, I don't think anyone's ever asked for waffles in my courtroom before." Judge Reynolds surprised everyone by calling for a recess. "Your Honor?" the bailiff asked, confused. "Recess," the judge repeated. "I'll need a moment." As he left the courtroom, whispers erupted among the spectators. Vanessa crouched down to Chloe's level, her voice low but urgent. "Chloe, sweetie, you can't just say things like that." "But I'm hungry," Chloe said, her lower lip trembling. Vanessa sighed, her frustration melting into guilt. Minutes later, the judge returned, his black robe flowing as he took his seat. The courtroom held its breath. The tension was palpable as Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses, his every movement slow and deliberate. Vanessa clutched the edge of the defendant's podium, her knuckles white, her pulse racing in her ears. She could feel the weight of every gaze in the room pressing down on her, as if the entire world was waiting for his words. Judge Reynolds cleared his throat, his piercing eyes scanning the room before settling back on Vanessa. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone no longer as cold as it had been earlier. There was something different now, something measured, almost human. Vanessa felt her heart climb into her throat. This was it. "I've reviewed your case," he continued, his voice steady but softened. "You have a clean record, and I understand the circumstances that led to this violation." Her breath hitched. She didn't dare exhale. She didn't blink. Then he said it. "I am dismissing the $500 fine." For a moment, Vanessa froze. It didn't register. Did he say what she thought he said? The words replayed in her mind, but she couldn't believe them. Then, as if on cue, the courtroom erupted. The soft murmur of applause started somewhere in the gallery, quickly growing into a crescendo of claps and cheers. Vanessa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Thank you, Your Honor," she managed to whisper, her voice cracking with emotion. Chloe tugged on her sleeve, looking up with her innocent eyes. "Mommy, why are people clapping? Did the judge make you happy?" Vanessa let out a soft laugh, choking on her tears as she pulled Chloe into a hug. "Yes, baby," she whispered into her daughter's curls. He did, but Judge Reynolds wasn't finished. He tapped his gavel gently to bring the room to order. "Miss Carter," he said, his tone firm but undeniably warm now, "dismissing this fine may ease your immediate burden, but I understand that the challenges you face go far beyond this courtroom." Vanessa wiped her tears, her attention snapping back to the judge. He gestured to the bailiff, who walked over with a neatly printed document. "I'm providing you with a list of resources," Judge Reynolds continued, holding her gaze. "This includes childcare support, job training programs, and a free online degree opportunity through Rutgers University. These tools are designed to help people in your position build a better future, not just for yourself, but for your daughter." The room fell silent, the applause replaced with awe. Even the stern bailiff, who had barely cracked a smile all day, seemed moved as he handed Vanessa the paper. She took it with trembling hands, staring at the text as the words blurred through her tears. "Childcare support," she whispered aloud. "Job training, a degree program." Her voice broke as she looked back up at the judge. Judge Reynolds offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Justice isn't just about punishment, Miss Carter. Sometimes it's about giving people the tools they need to succeed." The room buzzed with quiet murmurs of approval as Vanessa clutched the paper to her chest. She tried to find the words to express her gratitude, but none came. "You don't need to thank me," Judge Reynolds said, almost reading her thoughts. "Just use these resources. Make them count." Vanessa nodded, her tears flowing freely. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the system was stacked against her. For the first time, she felt seen. Months later, the smell of fresh waffles filled the tiny kitchen. Warm sunlight streamed through the window, landing on Chloe's curls as she sat at the table, happily munching on her favorite breakfast. Her stuffed lion, Leo, sat beside her, watching over the syrupy feast. Vanessa sat across from her, her laptop open, surrounded by notebooks and textbooks, the site of the coursework. Something she never thought she'd have the chance to do, filled her with a mix of determination and gratitude. It had been months since that day in court, but the memory was as vivid as ever. That list of resources Judge Reynolds provided had been more than just words on paper. It had been a lifeline. Vanessa had enrolled in the free online degree program at Rutgers University, something she once thought was completely out of reach. With affordable childcare now in place, she could finally focus on building a future for herself and Chloe. She'd even started job training for a position at a local nonprofit. It wasn't easy, but for the first time, she felt like she was moving forward. "Mommy," Chloe said, her voice pulling Vanessa from her thoughts. "Yes, sweetie? Do you think the nice judge likes waffles?" Chloe asked, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Vanessa couldn't help but laugh, her heart swelling with warmth. "I think he might, Coco," she said, smiling. "I really think he might." Chloe giggled, twirling her fork in the syrup. "Maybe we should send him some." Vanessa paused, a thoughtful smile playing on her lips. "Maybe we should," she said softly. She leaned back in her chair, watching Chloe devour another bite of waffle. The weight that had once pressed on her shoulders, the constant worry, the sleepless nights, wasn't gone entirely, but it had lifted enough to let her breathe. She looked back at her textbooks, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't known in years. Every word she read, every assignment she completed, was a step toward the life she wanted to build for her daughter. In her mind, Vanessa could still hear Judge Reynolds' words. Justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about giving people the tools they need to succeed. As Chloe hummed a happy tune, Vanessa felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the judge, but for the chance he had given her. For the first time, she didn't just feel hopeful. She felt empowered. Vanessa reached across the table, brushing a curl out of Chloe's face. "You know what, Coco? We're going to be okay." Chloe grinned, syrup smeared on her cheek. "I know, Mommy. You're the best." Vanessa laughed, her heart full. The road ahead might still be long, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Together, she and Chloe were rewriting their story, And it all started with a moment of kindness in an unexpected place. News of Judge Reynolds' unexpected act of kindness spread quickly. Local media highlighted his rare moment of compassion, inspiring others to see the justice system in a new light. As for Vanessa, the judge's kindness gave her the courage to dream again. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And it all began with a little girl who simply wanted waffles. What do you think of Judge Reynolds' decision? Would you have done the same? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how your thoughts resonate with the story. Thank you for watching and inspiring us.